Welcome back, everybody, to ADHD and Free, the podcast brought to you by the Awareness Space Network, a podcast and social media platform that explores how ADHDers can live their truth and feel free in their lives. We hear from inspiring coaches, therapists, experts, and fellow ADHDers from all over the world who sit down with me, Owen Morgan, to share their wisdom with us. I'm a wellbeing coach and a passionate neurodivergent human who received his ADHD diagnosis at 41. That day, the truth transformed my life, and I was finally free of the burden of not knowing why I struggled to fit into societal expectations. Hands up if you hear me, ADHDers. My mission is to explore how the human spirit and understanding our whole self can bring us a life full of possibilities. So on today's show, we have wellbeing coach Charlotte Crawford. On this, I think, fourth episode, I've lost track, I think it's 4 of the ADHD Thrive Guide. Welcome, Char, to the show. I'm really grateful for you being here today. Christmas is just gone, and we are now back on it, spreading the good message after all the festivities. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
No, thank you. I'm starting to build a very obvious community. So I saw you, I listened to you on Darren Kamak's podcast. And then I thought, oh, hang on a second. She's on Autocast, which is Jack's podcast. Both of those guys have been on my show.
I'm
And
everywhere.
I thought, oh no, she seems really, really cool. And just
Thank you.
not not like an informal stuffy therapist. You are just like everybody else, but you know your stuff and you really care. And I thought that's a cool combo. So we had to do this today. So give us some context here, like we always say on the show. Just give us some context to kind of what you're doing right now out there in this space. You know, you're helping people, So mostly why you care about the neurodivergent community and how you're doing that to help.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question I'd probably put out there is why don't people care enough about the neurodivergent community? I think, we are a minority, but we are incredibly important to society. And I think knowing and learning about my own sort of diagnosis, it kind of made me realize where our true strengths are. I kind of see things in I normally see the positives in everything, as bizarre as that might seem to a lot of people, but that's a key strength. And I think that in society there is a lot of misunderstanding towards the neurodivergent community. And even when you look at rules out there that are set in workplaces, in schools, in any kind of structural organization, can really, really sort of diminish the sort of sense of purpose and sense of identity in neurodivergent individuals. And I think that really what we should be looking at is trying to understand neurodivergent minds and how they can really impact society as a whole. There's a lot that we have to offer. And so I feel that's why I'm quite passionate. I'm very passionate about these things because, we have a lot to offer. And I don't think that many of us actually see the worth that we have inside of us because of how society has sometimes broken us down and made us lose a sense of who we are. So I want to help people find that sense of who they are and really own it and be part of society and make a society that is more understanding and loving towards people of differences.
Yeah, thanks so much. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking so much about how we're perceived. So the way we behave, I guess we could use the B word, the way we behave, or how we're presenting all of our traits, ND or otherwise, how they're presented then gets perceived in a certain way, and that's fed back to us over time, isn't it? And then that can layer how we feel about who we are and how we
Yeah.
fit in and what we're good for and what we can and can't do. So I think sometimes the kind of work that yourself and other people in this space are doing is to help us all reconnect again to who we truly are, ND or otherwise. You know, it doesn't define who
NDR,
we.
because I think, even the people around us, we might be neurodivergent, but we might be friends with people that are neurotypicals. And I definitely have friends that are neurotypical and we do work very differently. But I really do sort of appreciate the difference because there's a lot that I can learn from them and there's an awful lot that they can learn from me as well. So
Mhm.
it's like trying to find the balance between all of it. That's the important part, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like avoiding this us and them. Because whenever I do videos,
Mm.
I'm like, hey, calling out all ADHD, all ADHDers and other neurodivergent types. I do it on Instagram. I just want to be really clear. I'm not saying, hey, it's us against
Yeah,
every single.
no, it never is us against anyone. And I think anyone that does think that, feel that it is us against them, should sort of look at themselves and think, but what could I learn from people that are different from me? Because I think it's really important. And I just think that, the reason I'm passionate about neurodivergent people is because we are a minority and we need people that are willing and courageous enough to put our voices out there. And that, there are neurodivergents that can't speak for themselves. So we have a responsibility to let those people's voices be heard.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's brain types really. I mean, take all the words away. We all had different brain types, and
Mm,
even things like dyslexia and other elements like that have an impact on how we learn. So that's a different version of a brain type when it comes to learning. So it's just
yeah.
remembering we're all just hopefully it's all amazing, lovely humans doing good things in all different kinds of ways, and we all bring something to the table. They always say that in a lot of stuff I listen to that having people on any sort of neurodivergent level within a business, within a company, no matter how big the company is, can be really useful in other ways that haven't been thought of before. The creativity and the flexibility around that is really, really powerful. So
Mm.
it's pretty cool. I mean, we all have hopefully something to offer in any space that we're in, big or small. Wow. Okay, this is very powerful stuff already. We already jumped straight in. But let's get back to basics here. Let's get the groundwork in. So we've groundworked in what you're doing at the moment and how you're working with people. So we don't have to talk about this for too long because that's for the other show, me, myself, and ADHD. So we can always bring you back for that. But just a brief overview of when you got your diagnosis, how that looked, how it impacted you in that moment. That's a lot, I know, but just some basics there. Give us a sense of you on a personal level.
So ADHD on a personal level for me, I haven't been diagnosed as ADHD. I've been diagnosed as autistic, but I do identify with a lot of the sort of symptoms that ADHDers do have and experience. I find that a lot of my ADHD tendencies tend to come around executive dysfunction, being an autistic individual. So it can be overwhelming, and I can definitely relate to that difficulty of being able to focus, procrastinating things because you feel so overwhelmed, and the time blindness is definitely a big one, especially when overwhelmed. And I can only imagine what it's like for ADHDers if that's something that is quite a constant for them. I do have friends that are ADHD, and I've had people sort of say to me before, like, how can you sort of be happy with having friends that are late all the time and things like that? And my response is, because I've been around them when they're trying to get ready and I can see what the
Mm.
experience of getting ready looks like. And it's very, very difficult to explain to someone that hasn't seen it or been in the experience. And seeing someone, knowing that they need to get ready for a particular time but constantly being distracted by everything around them, it's such an overwhelming experience. And the feelings that come with being late all the time and people being unhappy with them, like, they take those feelings on. And I think, when I see those kind of when I see people make those comments, I get a little bit judgmental, like, how can you judge someone when you've not experienced it yourself to such a degree?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, especially when people when you know somebody is showing all the signs of certain behaviors look very similar to what you know to be ND, but that's not part of their journey. They don't want to know. You can tell, not in a bad way or a good way, just that they're not going to go down that path. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because then you can, at least then we can be like, oh, that's cool. I understand. So we just accommodate that. So if we know they're going to be a little bit late, we don't organize anything straight after, say they come to pick up their child, a bit like our situation with my stepson's dad. So we just know, you just make accommodations for that as long as it's not too impactful. But I think once you get the diagnosis, yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts. Is I feel like I'm so much more compassionate to all humans now for some reason. Now I have neurodivergent brain. I'm like, okay, I can see everybody differently now. It's like, oh, I can see why they get angry like that quite a lot. I know I see it. It's obviously, it's all got a bit much and it's turned on, dopamine's low and they're finding it really hard. And it's much easier to like go, okay, cool. And then I don't take everything so personally now, I'm not so
You know what?
resentful.
It's funny you say that. I feel that my love of psychology, and although I haven't taken my psychology degree yet, it's something that I just study for fun, which is why I've said to myself, I need to take a degree.
Mm-hmm.
When you learn all of that and how people behave and what they do, you kind of look at people in a way of no one really means what they're doing. Yes, there are people out there that do mean to cause harm, but the majority of people are just trying to survive. So that's kind of how I view a lot of life, and it does make you feel a lot of compassion towards people. Does it mean that we are 100% compassionate towards everyone around us? Not always. We're human as well, and we have our times where we sometimes might flip a switch and sometimes have a bad day. But it's owning it when you do sort of meet that moment and being like, I'm sorry, like it wasn't you, it was me. And sort of being honest with yourselves, really.
Yeah, so true. I have so much to say, but I'm not going to side quest. I'm going to bring it back. So there you're going for diagnosis and you get the autism diagnosis. Just
Yeah.
tell me briefly what was happening in your life that made you think, hmm, book in or go on a waiting list, whatever happened for you. Why, why, what was going on? Why were you like, what was that?
Honestly, my entire life, I've been questioning why. I feel like I'm led by that question. Why am I the way that I am? Why do I feel so different? Why do I feel like an alien in the room? How is it that I can fit in so well yet feel so alone? And that was the big sort of thing for me. It was the feeling alone, even when you're in a room full of people. And it's because it was recognizing that I've not been myself, because I'm often seen in my life. I've always felt like I've been too much or not enough. It was always one end or the other. It was very, very difficult for me to feel like I was just in between. And I think I got to a point in my life where my mental health was just getting worse and worse. And I've had a lot of health problems because of all of this internalizing my thoughts and my feelings. And I just reached a point where I was like, enough is enough. I need to really sort of get myself better, and start living for me, because I think I'm a very compassionate individual. I feel like I'm led by love, which is very, to some people might seem ridiculous, but to me it's very, very important. And I think because I'm that passionate, I had been using a lot of my energy to fit in rather than to do what I love and to do things for me. And I was out on holiday with some friends, and I can't remember what we were doing, but we were just being free, and just enjoying ourselves. We were pretending to be mermaids in the water, and we were about 25, 26 at the time, which most people will probably think you're 25, 26. Why are you still behaving like mermaids? And it's like, because we wanted to be free and we wanted to enjoy life. But I had a friend sort of say to me, have you ever considered that you might be autistic? And I was like, what? No. And I kind of rejected it quite bluntly, at first, because I didn't really understand autism or ADHD at all. So again, because of that big question, why, and what, I like to know information. I was like, right, let's go check out what this actually is then. So I did some research, found myself in a rabbit hole, and I was like, this is literally describing my entire existence. And I spoke to family and friends about it, and they kind of weren't on board. They was like, I don't know, not sure. I thought so, because of that sort of invalidation, I kind of had a deeper sort of urge to be like, oh, I need to go and really investigate this, but maybe with a professional. So I went and got a professional diagnosis. I didn't want to wait on the NHS. The waiting list was far too long, and I was privileged enough to be able to book an appointment privately. And it was one of the best things that I'd ever done. One of the best and the worst, I'm going to be honest, because when I first got my diagnosis, I was in a big rut. It's like you're grieving your entire existence, and you go through a shame spiral of, you know, what if I'd have done this? What if I'd have done that? And you blame yourself an awful lot. But when you come out of the other end, you kind of realize, wow, like there's so much that I didn't actually know about myself. As self-aware as I thought I was, I really wasn't. And it's just helped me sort of understand how my brain works. You know, I can understand me as a person, and what I believe in, but I didn't understand how my brain worked, and how my actions affected my brain either. You know, I was always very stubborn and was like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to be perfect, perfect, perfect. But I was exhausting myself into nothing. So actually learning what my limitations were and learning to accept them was probably the most life-changing thing for me, in a sort of positive way.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll definitely touch on the pushing, you know, and how
Yeah.
that pushing, pushing to either fit in or do what we need to do, all the things that affect the executive functioning, we still have to push. We'll talk about that as the show unfolds, because I know you do a lot of work around that. But, you know, I just want to honor what you said, that so many have said so far on this podcast series, which is this whole element of the grief of what was and what you didn't do, and then the shame, you know, all the behaviors you think about, or maybe the people you lost, friendships that were broken down by our behavior, and you're like, God, you know, I'm just broken, or, you know, I'm just not a good friend, or, you know, you have to like process, oh no, hang on a minute, I was a good friend, it just wasn't the right circumstance or environment for me to thrive in. That's a
Hmm.
weird thing to overcome. It's like you thought maybe you were a bad friend at the time, but you're like, oh no, I wasn't. But you can't repair it. Maybe that's ruptured. The rupture's already happened. So
I mean,
it's interesting.
there's definitely times where I look back and I think, you know, I've not always been the best friend to have around. And because especially when you get into the negative part of like your mental health and you find it even harder to mask, yeah, I've definitely not always been the best friend to have around, but I'm grateful for the people that stuck around and love me for me, the good parts and the bad parts.
Definitely, and it's a chance to reconnect, you know. And so I've had that already. People are like, oh wow, you know, how you feeling about everything, and then you start to chat about it. I haven't, you know, may have not talked for a while, and then boom, you know, it's reborn in this new kind of interesting way. And I've quite often they're saying, yeah, I've always wondered, you know, because I've struggled too, and they'll say, I always feel, you know, drawn to what feels like people with the same vibe. And it's like, yeah, that's the thing. It does happen. And then that gives them a chance. I think some people have already now started to book in since finding out that I had it, just because they know me well. They're like, oh my God. And that was just for me announcing it. Hey guys, I have ADHD. And they're like, oh my God. And that was it. So I don't even need to do this podcast. I've already done it by just saying I have it. So
I think
it's
people
quite
don't realize
massive.
the courage that it takes for us to bring, like, to speak about our diagnosis as well, because it is very vulnerable to put ourselves in this position to talk about our diagnosis, because there is always a lot of like stigma around diagnosis and things like that. So I think it's just a very brave thing if you feel you're confident enough to talk about your diagnosis. It's a really sort of courageous thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, go off on a tangent here, but people often used to say to me, or they kind of do now, it's like, what are you doing now? So in a sense, like I'm always changing things and trying a new career out. And they're like, oh, what are you doing now? And it's just so horrible to hear that sentence when you don't know. You just feel like
Yeah.
there's so much shame, like it's pathetic. Why can't I just find my path or find my way? And now I'm like, oh no, I love it. I love doing all these different things and doing all this stuff as I go. And I feel like I'm getting close. Yeah, I'm doing a degree. Why not? You know, and hopefully I'll be able to use it. But if I don't use it, who gives a shit? I'm going to do something else.
You've got all that
Yeah.
knowledge there, and you've given yourself that opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, what does it matter if you
Yeah.
don't follow through?
What a
It
rich
doesn't.
life. It's a rich life,
Yeah.
isn't it? How cool is that? You know, that's
Exactly.
that's definitely one of the benefits of this is that we get to like just go around, do all this crazy stuff and learn all this cool stuff and just like, okay, cool. It's a very rich and full life. And a lot of people don't get that opportunity because our
It's
brain is
true.
pushing us in that way. I think that's really cool. Cool. All right. Thank you so much. That gives us a really nice background on everything. So, in regards to what you're doing, what are the kind of key, I'm hearing the same things. Let's see, she might say something different. But what are the key things that people are coming to you with in regards to a neurodivergent brain, autistic, ADHD, or otherwise? What are you seeing some common threads here? Because some people talk about self-worth, some are talking about executive functioning. What are you finding is quite common?
Oh gosh, I get several things. So there's definitely been executive dysfunction, and that's been one of the key ones in a lot of the people that I work with. Fatigue and feeling overwhelmed, and this isn't just fatigue, but also burnout is another area that I find is common. And it's funny how many people reach burnout and then get diagnosed. That's been a common theme that I've noticed with the people that I work with. A low self-esteem as well, because of a lot of the negative sort of comments from others, and also how they feel about themselves can be quite common. And also procrastination, because with the coaching that I do, the whole purpose of it is to help people get their life back. And if they hadn't had a life, then it's to create a life that they want. And procrastination can lead people to just sort of stay in one place for a very, very long time. And so, working on that procrastination is really, really important. I find that, funnily enough, procrastination tends to be one of the biggest challenges overall. While there's executive dysfunction and things like emotional dysregulation, things like that, the procrastination and not taking action kind of prevents people from improving in the long run, because people then start to sort of follow the same patterns and do the same things that have always made them unhappy. So that's like a key one as well.
Yes,
It's
it's just
quite
like,
fun, really.
yeah, it's as you say that. It's kind of like when it comes to procrastination, it's like, well, there's a few reasons why you might procrastinate. But
Mm,
if it's executive function, it can be like, oh God, this is going to be rough. I'm going to have to really try and get through. And that's causing you to procrastinate. Or it might be like you're really
yeah.
fatigued and lethargic and tired. Okay, right, I can do this. All of those things are going to be having an impact. And it's like the only way you're going to be able to thrive is to not be in that place to begin with, where you're interacting with your presentations in a really compassionate way, saying, cool, all right. So I'm going to rest up today. I'm going to do my breathing techniques. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to get myself in a good space. And then tomorrow I should be ready to go. It's like knowing when it's okay to go, right, let's do some self work here so I can do it a little bit later on. But all of those procrastinations are going to be something you think to do with, okay, we can do this. It's like being your own cheerleader, which isn't necessarily the way you want to live every day, is it?
No,
Cheerleading.
it's true, and I find that procrastination is often the result of something being missing. So whether it be energy, whether it be wanting to, if your mind is feeling like it's in a fog, it's very, very difficult to take action when your mind is in a fog. But sometimes what it is with sort of procrastination, if someone's in that point where they're struggling to even get out of bed, because I have worked with people that have struggled with that. It's trying to find in that situation, right? Okay, but what's going to get you out of bed? What are you going to feel? Some large emotion, because a lot of the time I find a lot of neurodivergence very emotion led as opposed to thinking led. Not all the time, but in some instances. And sometimes it's a case of like, how are we going to get you out of bed? How are we going to get that motivation inside to get you out of bed to do something for you? Because sometimes, the thought of, cleaning our teeth and doing the basic tasks like washing your face, cleaning your teeth, getting yourself ready, those often seem to be some of the hardest tasks for our neurodivergent minds, but they're easy for everyone else. And that can sometimes come from a sense of low self-worth. You think, oh, well, it doesn't really matter if I don't do this, da, da, da. But it's like, but if you continue to not look after yourself over a very long period of time, you might lose your teeth if you don't brush them. You might, if you don't turn up to work in an appropriate attire, that will be picked up on, and then that will make you feel even worse. So it's like trying to motivate people to actually take care of like themselves first, and then focus on everything else afterwards, because it can be very, very hard to do that when you're in that mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting that all the brain fog stuff. I experienced that quite a bit. I know that well.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of that, I work night shift, sort of half night shift, finish at 3 a.m. I really don't think that's helping my brain at all. My ND brain does not need that on top. So we make choices, right? You know, I'm
Yeah.
psychologically safe in that job. I feel psychologically safe. I'm well respected. I'm good at my job, so that feels great. Lots of dopamine involved. But most importantly, I'm safe. I'm psychologically safe. And people, if you can get that in your life, you're halfway there. Because when you feel safe in the environment you're in and the people you're around, you're going to thrive more. It's huge.
That security is so important as well, because you know your job, as sad as this might sound to a lot of people, your job is your livelihood. Your job is the thing that gives you the money so that you can survive and like live the life that you want to. So you have to feel comfortable in it, don't you?
Yeah, you certainly do. And as long as as long as it's a healthy job and it's serving you as well.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm sure nights isn't serving me in the long run, but it's a right now thing. But yeah, I know on some of the other podcasts you've been on, you know, you've been talking about burnout a lot. I was like, oh, we're going to talk about it today. But I've noticed with the show, it's better to let the topic inform the title of what the show's about. So we keep
Yeah.
going because we're touching a lot on here on motivation, how we'll deal with fatigue, burnout. So we're touching on all of those things. But I don't need to have to constantly talk about burnout on every show you go on. But
Yeah,
we
I like
will
talking about many
touch
things.
on it. We'll touch on it. We'll touch on it as we go. So, you know, so you're working with people with, yeah, procrastination, fatigue, executive functioning, things like that. So, what are your thoughts then on the overwhelm piece? So, do you feel it's important for people to spot their what they call window of tolerance in other forms of psychology, but kind of knowing their window of how much they can do before they tip into that is is that a big part of how we can start to rebuild our nervous system more than anything, but also knowing because we want to prevent, don't we? We don't want to be dealing with it afterwards. Here are all the tools you need for when you're burnt out. These are the tools you need. We all know that we don't want to do that. We want to be preventative. So is it about getting into that client's brain and heart and soul and knowing, is it what they're doing that's burning them out because they're not connecting to it, or is it more to do with time management and stuff? Sorry, I've given you a lot there. I will let you just run. Here's the ball. Run.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of things really. I kind of the window of tolerance. I kind of view it as a bathtub, and I see it as a full bathtub. And sometimes people that are ADHD will fill their bathtub to the very rim, and it only takes a little push for it to overflow. So when I sort of work with people, we take a look at that bathtub. This is just metaphorically speaking,
Yeah, that works.
and we look at the bathtub, and it's about breaking down what actions they might be doing to hinder their success, because you know, as sometimes when we're in this mindset of overwhelm, it can be so easy for us to blame everything else. We can blame the world, we can blame capitalism, we can blame how we were brought up. We can blame and blame and blame, but a lot of the time we have to look inwards and think, okay, but what am I doing to myself? And when you look at it as a whole, sometimes we talk to ourselves, and that's because that's what we think we're worth. We think that we should be torturing ourselves, and it's not always something that people are aware of either. So it's about looking at, okay, but what actions have you been doing like overall each day, and breaking things down, because when you break things down you can see things more clearly. And an exercise that I like to do, and I don't do it with every client, it really depends who I'm working with because I like to cater it per person, is actually writing down what you're doing in the day, step by step. Like at this time I was doing this, at that time I was doing that, and doing that for a week. Because then you'll look back and you'll sort of think, you can then look back at when your energy levels started to diminish, and you can see like what you were doing beforehand. And there were times where, oh, I skipped a meal, oh, I didn't do this, oh, I didn't do that. And it's like the simple things that we should be doing for ourselves as human beings that we sometimes neglect, because we might get too focused on a work project or get too focused on, you know, our own interests. We might watch a film and forget that we need to go to the toilet because sometimes our body doesn't signal that for us. So, you know, depending on the person, if someone has the problem with knowing when they need to eat or knowing when they need to go to the toilet, it's about, okay, well, what will help you. For some people, they've said to me alarms have been very helpful. So setting alarms to help them remember to do certain tasks. And for others, they find writing things down much easier. But I like to work with people on like a individual basis, because we are all so different. And some people like writing, some people like drawing as well. So there's loads of different ways that we each process ourselves. But when it's working with the person, it's about trying to find what's making them overflow their bathtub, and removing things that no longer serve them. And I'm not saying sort of removing like a sofa or things like that. Obviously,
Mhm.
that's in our living room and things like that. But removing like actions that no longer serve us. Are you putting yourself in situations that don't make you feel happy? Are you going to parties just to fit in, or are you going to parties because you actually enjoy being at parties with the people that you are surrounding yourself with? If you're going to a party that you don't enjoy, and you're making yourself go just to fit in, that's where you might need to have a look at yourself and think, ah, I'm doing more for other people than I have been doing for me for a very long time. And sort of having a look at, well, what would you want to do instead? If you didn't want to go to something like an extravagant party, what would you want to do instead that might serve your energy, but also still keep you surrounded with people that you care about?
Yeah, it's just I just want to say I love the bathtub. I'm very visual anyway, and I love coming up with these cool visual representations of things. But it's a really, really cool way to think about it, isn't it? It's kind of, if I think about all the stuff I've got, I told you off recording.
You've
Then
got
yeah,
loads of stuff, yes.
I'm pretty much, yeah, my water is on the edge because I feel like I'm thrashing around a bit as well. It's like there's so many things in that really. The water's at the edge, and there's so much. I'm like, oh, which one shall I do today? And I just feel like I'm a bit restless, thrashing around a little bit. So there's going to be water sort of coming out, coming out there. I'm taking it too far, but
It's sometimes like should or need to. It's like,
yeah,
but do you want to? What do you want to do today? Because I think sometimes we go with, oh, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that. But sometimes it's okay, but what one do you actually want to do? Like, what one's going to give you that sense of success or sense of purpose or meaning each day, so that you feel good about what you've done in that day?
yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've got to be careful with our words. Yeah, shoulds are very controversial thing to say.
It
Um,
can be very
yeah,
demanding for some people. I know that when I say to myself, "Oh, I should do that," I actually end up avoiding it. So it's even the wording that we use is so important, and it sounds ridiculous, but it just is. That's how we work. But when I say to myself, "Oh, I want to do this," I actually then want to do it. But when I say, "Oh, I should do that," I'm like, "Oh,
yeah.
maybe later."
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, with you wanting to do your psychology degree training and the degree I'm doing now. That's very much a should. Like I have a deadline, and
Yep.
and I hate, not all the time, but being told what to do. I don't know if it's MD or not. It winds
Oh,
me
I'm
up.
with you on that as well.
And it's saying like you must have this in by then. I'm like, oh, I'll do it when I want to do it. Whereas with all my projects, my podcasts, I am in complete control. Yeah, today I fancy doing 2 podcast recordings, and it feels good. Choice,
Yeah.
autonomy. I love autonomy. I already get autonomy in this world. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I love. I've got myself in a bit of a pickle because I love all the things that I do. There's
Yeah.
kind of too many of them considering I'm a full-time employee as well. But I love all of them, and it creates this weird stress where everything's enjoyable, but it just wipes me out because it's just too much to do. But I don't want to get rid of anything because I love all of it. But people are like, you should probably drop something. I'm like, I will not drop something. How dare you? So I've got my. What would? Okay, so Shah, I've come into your clinic space or online. What would you say to me? So I love everything I do. My bath's insanely full. I can burn out at any moment, but I do not want to lose anything. I have ideas and I'm trying things that are helping. But what would you recommend I do? And let's see if it compares to what I'm trying to do already.
I think my first sort of question to you would be, if you're doing everything that you you enjoy and you truly love, if you continue using your energy the way that you do, and you continue using it over a space of a year, where might you be in a year's time where your energy levels are concerned?
I would probably say I would be so burnt out that I'll probably have some other health complications. I've seen that in friends. What happens with a certain, like my adrenals could be completely wiped out, and I could have adrenal fatigue issues. I'm not able
Mm.
to do hardly any of it. I can barely have enough energy to do 20 minutes of something, and that would be devastating. So, as a coach, I can kind of give you some lines. That's what I'd probably say.
Yeah, and I can completely hear that, because I find, it's very difficult, sort of balancing that act of passion, something that you truly love doing, and that sense of, I should be looking after myself, and that's where I would use the word should. I should look after myself, because we've only got one body, we've only got one life, and we don't want to waste our energy to a point where we can't do anything, because without our well-being we don't really have anything, and that's just fact. It's very, very difficult to get yourself out of bed every day if you've got long-term health issues, and there are people that are neurodivergent with long-term health issues, and that's a fight that they have to deal with every single day. But I think in that kind of situation, it's a case of, what are you willing to let go of so that you can manage your energy levels over a period of a year, and could you potentially pick that up in a year's time?
Yeah, yeah, I've done that. I've done that as well. Yeah, so the boost, the boom and not boost, boost and boom, boom or crash or whatever you want to call it. So I've
Mm.
quit things many times and then brought them
Yeah.
back. So
Yeah.
my podcast has ended 5 times. I'm back. So now it's like, Owen, you love it. Spread it out, one person a week. So it's just having some. I hate rules as well. So it's like you can only do one a week. I'm like, screw you. I'm doing two. So it's trying to be really compassionate about. Um, it's okay. It's like taking yourself to like a child. It's okay, Owen. It's going to be okay. I know it's very exciting. You can do this. But I, what I've tried, I'd love to see what you think about this, is number one is I have, the clocks where you turn it and you can see the colors like a rainbow. So you turn it to
Yeah.
10 minutes and you've got the rainbow thing and then it ticks
Oh, the
down.
timers.
So it's like
Yep.
it's not like an egg timer because they're really basic, but it's quite like a child thing really, but I love it. So you just wind it up to 20 minutes. It's not electronic. I don't use my phone. And then when it rings, then the idea is to stop. I normally go, I just gonna put 5 more minutes back on there a sec. But I then do stop after that 5 minutes. So number one, that's really
Yeah.
helped. But I thought, okay, Owen, and I can ask you about the dopamine element of it. What I find is when I don't do my projects or I don't do these things, so I'm working, family, rest, I get really down, I get really low, and I'm presuming it's
Yeah.
something to do with my dopamine stores. So I feel really flat, and I do actually feel sad. And I thought it was
Yeah.
depression when I was younger. Well, it probably is in a way, but I know these things mean a lot because they help my dopamine as well. They help me keep stable, and that dopamine allows me to be more executive functioning with that. The dopamine is allowing me to do the things I have to do. So having to go and do the
Yeah.
school run, having to go to work, having to work nights is only possible with dopamine. People think dopamine is about having a great time and doing things you love. It's not. You need dopamine to function, to
Yeah.
move your body, to interact with things. So it's important I do these beautiful things because it gives me the dopamine, and without it, I get really low. So it's knowing how to have enough of it in my daily life where I get all my dopamine needs in a really beautiful way, but also enough rest, which is also dopamine, if that makes sense. So I like having a lie down. I've fallen in love with it. Okay, have a lie down and I put a little duvet or a sheet on or some material that you like or a fiddle toy, and your body just feels great. Like, I start yawning and it feels fantastic. So I've managed to find a way of creating nap time as a dopamine rich experience. So I've got the
Yeah.
best of both worlds. Dopamine podcast, dopamine nap. So What do you think about that? Is that quite a clever way of like trying to understand how your dopamine works and how to make restful time also dopamine rich? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because dopamine's really, really important, especially for ADHDers. And it's something that helps with that motivation and regulating that sense of reward. It helps our like our mood and things like that. And I think the flatness can sometimes come by where your dopamine's probably been at a lower sort of base level than usual, and so that can kind of trigger a sort of lack of reward feeling within us. And when that's triggered, it's very, very difficult to build it back up. And I find that with some people, when they have that flat, I kind of call it a crash, really,
Mm.
because you have that crash, and it can be very difficult to do anything. And sometimes it's like you have to kind of build that dopamine level back up in any way that you can, to get yourself up and ready. And everyone's way of building their dopamine back up is going to be incredibly different for them versus other people. I know that when I have a dopamine lowered moment, I lay in bed in my cocoon, because I love to cocoon up in bed, and I like just sitting on my phone scrolling on TikTok or scrolling on the internet. I either do that or I like to do Sudoku. I like to sit
Mhm.
and play Sudoku. And to other people, they're like, "Oh, you're wasting your time." No, I'm building up my mental energy. Like that's what gives me that sense of a kick, to do something. Because then once I've got enough, I feel like, right, now I've got enough mental energy, I can now go and do something. But when you're in that deficit, it's very, very difficult to motivate yourself to do anything, isn't it?
It's true, like whatever you've got to do, like have no shame around it. People may think that behavior is something, like you say, just have a little scroll session for 10 minutes or whatever. Excuse me.
Especially.
Cut. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, just do what you got to do. I'm really starting to give it that kind of beep it energy, fuck it energy. It's like if that helps me, then who cares? Most of the time it's at home, people can't see it anyway. But what I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, because it's quite an interesting one, is that people will have the things that they're doing or love to do, the things that are commonly burning them out or overwhelming them. Do you think it's important for people to find other ways to get to the same end? So, whatever they're doing, have they thought of other ways of doing that task in a way which is either shorter, more efficient? I find sometimes it's hard for our ND brains to see the pathway differently. How we can, like, how can I edit in a more efficient way? How can I create a video which is quicker to make? And just finding,
Mhm.
and that way I can still do what I love, just using a new approach that maybe a coach can help us with. Do you think that's a big part of it as well? So rather than just having to like do a lot less of everything because it's better for you, it's like, no, still do it, but just find a creative new way of doing it differently.
Yeah, I think it's important to be efficient with what you're doing, because it's, with the time that we have in the day, there's not really an awful lot, especially when it comes to our energy levels. And if people are working a full-time job and also trying to do the things that they enjoy, that can be really, really difficult to juggle. So it's about being efficient and sometimes thinking, okay, I really want to do this. What's the quickest way that I could do this, and still enjoy it? Because there's things that you could do. For example, is maybe ask for help, which might be hiring a company to help with editing and things like that. But sometimes people feel unhappy with that because it's like the control is taken away and their sense of doing that task has been taken away. So it's like, okay, if you still want to do it yourself, how can you do it more efficiently? I mean, in today's day and age when AI is a thing and there's so many
Mhm.
tools out there, it almost feels like it's easy to get these things done, but the problem is there's so many options. So sometimes making the decision on those options can be really, really tough. I think it's not always a case of stopping what you're doing, but trying to find a way that's efficient, and also trying to find a like contingency plan is kind of what I'd refer to it as you know if I'm on high energy level days, this is what I can manage. If I have low energy level days, what am I going to be able to manage, and what I need to source out elsewhere on those low energy level days? Is there anyone else that can support me with this? I think a lot of neurodivergents that I speak with have a very strong sense of not asking for help. And that's something that I've had to learn. And still to this day, it's something that I have to battle with and work with, and sort of say to myself, you didn't ask for help there when you probably could have or should have. And I didn't. So thinking about how other people can help you, and trusting that other people have your best interest at heart when you're doing those things. Because I think, sometimes we don't, people like to help people, and we don't always respect or appreciate how much people like to help people. And it's despite us sort of thinking, oh, me asking for help is a bit of a burden, because I know that we've all been there, we've all fought those faults. It's not a burden for other people. Other people like to help. They like to feel that they're helpful and needed. So, being more open to accepting help when you need it.
Yep, I understand that very well. And even when the people do help it, they're either not doing it quick enough for my liking, or it's like, then that's my issue.
And then that if someone's not doing it as quickly or not doing it as efficiently or as well, no, they should be doing it efficiently. That's the whole point. But if they're not doing it in a way that you like, it's always about just providing feedback and just sort of saying, like, I really, really appreciate your help. It would have been better if we did it this way. I love the part that you did here. So just being honest about what you liked and what you don't like, because it's all about communication, isn't it? And I think without communication, how are we going to get anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. I've got really good at it now. It was bad at the beginning. I just do it myself. It's probably better, isn't it? It's probably easier for everybody. I just do it. But that's one thing. But yeah, just I'm throwing lots of questions at you, and we are going to be wrapping up shortly. But for me, I kind of, from what I've learned, listened to podcasts so far in 11 weeks since diagnosis, is the short-term dopamine, the mid-term dopamine, the long-term dopamine. So how long it takes for me to hit that dopamine. Oh my God, yay! From doing something. So just knowing which bits are which, I break it all down. So it's been really, really useful to know if I want a little tasty hit, so to speak. It's knowing what that is. And I think that's going to be really helpful going forward. So I have so much to do, but if I only have to do one thing today, which is short-term dopamine, because it's all creativity for me, Shah. So what it's all about is creativity. If I don't if I don't do something creative, I really notice that's where my flat and crashness comes from. There
Right.
seems to be this oozing. I need to, when I create something, I just feel amazing. I just feel so alive and connected to the world. So do you think
Yeah.
it's important to just have all your toolkit of all the different ways you can reach your goal?
I think it's so important to have a toolkit. I think, toolkits are incredibly important. It's something that I've got a program that I use, and I keep all of my, it's just a place where I keep notes really. But I actually sort of have a sort of list of things depending on my mood, because I'm very mood led. And I kind of, whether my mood is led by dopamine, serotonin, I don't know which one I'm tapping into sometimes, but I sort of say, if I'm feeling this way, this is what I probably need, and this is what I probably want. I always look at needs and wants. And if I'm feeling another way, I might need something else. So I'll give you an example. When I'm sort of feeling angry and overwhelmed, I need a lot of silence. I need space, and I need quiet, and I need darkness, so that I can get out of that space. Some people have said to me before, oh, well, sitting in a cold, dark room isn't going to make you feel any better. Wrong. That doesn't work for me. I like to sit in a cold, dark room and sit and be quiet. If I was to go into a bright yellow summer-filled room when I'm in that mood, I would feel awful. So that's one of them. If I'm feeling extremely happy, sometimes my happiness can cause me to be a bit impulsive. So I don't always think about, if I spend this much money, how is this going to affect me in the future? So if I'm feeling overly happy and overly willing to spend money, I sort of have a list of things that I need to do there to kind of chill myself out a little bit and kind of bring myself back to earth and be like, you don't need to be spending that much money on things, because it's so easy to do that. And being very emotion led can kind of cause problems in that sort of part, when it financially especially. And I hear that a lot for ADHDers as well, sort of needing to impulse buy to make ourselves feel better. Sometimes it's that we feel too good and we're like, oh, you know, I want this, I can get anything that I want, kind of feeling. So being mindful of our emotions is probably one of the steps. But I know that a lot of people, there are people out there that find it very difficult to tap into and understand their emotions. But I think that's part of what the coaching journey is all about, is trying to figure out who you are, what your responses are. Because as self-aware as we think we might be, we're not always self-aware when it comes to our bodies. Our bodies give the signs and the body keeps the score. We just aren't always aware of what our bodies are telling us. So it's always about trying to get back into that toolkit if you need it, so that you can sort of look at what does work for you and what has worked for you in the past. Because the toolkit that you create that's based on past experience, that's based on evidence that you've experienced in your life, and you know what's worked for you versus what hasn't. But you need, when you create a toolkit, you have to be in that logical mindset of, I know this worked for me before. And, you know, so that you can get back into that toolkit and use it.
Yeah, that's sort of self-awareness piece, you know, that's I find that self-awareness and then meeting yourself in every moment is half the work. Then
Mm.
it's knowing what to do with that information, which can be hard when you're driven by a motor, as they say in ADHD worlds. And I appreciate it's not, I appreciate it's not easy, because I can witness people with ADHD around me and my partner and things like that, where I see them, they're having a good day. If they generally struggle a bit with fatigue, they're having a good day and they hyper focus. They go, right, this is my chance. And then they'll start doing loads of stuff they need to do, even the boring houseworky bits or whatever, and then they're dead. And then they're having
Mm.
to spend a day recovering. And it's just heartbreaking, because I can see that that's a big part of the ND brain, is just,
Mm.
right, I'm good to go. And it's really exciting. We're really proactive when we feel like that. But what about feeling good today and still resting? Whoa. So you can actually just enjoy your body feeling okay for once and go for a nice chilled walk, not a run. Go for a nice
Yeah,
chilled walk.
things that are sort of
Enjoy
more
it.
like, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to do anything. I think sometimes we see rest as doing absolutely nothing, but you know, it's what recharges you. Essentially, that's what rest is, what recharges you. And for some people, exercise is a way to recharge. For others, exercise is a way to drain. So it's thinking about, you know, what actually works for the individual. It's quite interesting actually when you think about things like exercise, because I've definitely been a victim of the exercise mindset, where they say do loads of exercise, it'll make you feel good. And I did loads of exercise and it made me feel horrible.
Mhm.
um, and it was because I wasn't doing the right exercise for my body, for one, and also because I was pushing myself as though I was an Olympic champion. So you've got to think about the realistic goals that we set for ourselves as well, because it's so easy to fall into wanting to do too much. I find that so common in ADHDs. It's like that sense of perfectionism and wanting things to be perfect and great and experience it all at once, that sometimes we're not attentive to what our own needs are in the moment.
Yeah, so true. And thank you for, yeah, that when you think about rest, yeah, you're right. It can be activities. Yeah, it's not like I'm
Oh.
yeah, just sit around and rest and lie down. It's like a rest day for me is just turning my internet off, to be honest, and being away from this space for a little bit and just doing the other things that I love to do, which aren't to do with anybody else. So I'm not doing anything for anybody, or it's not a particular mission for anybody else. It's just cool. So I'm going to watch like a Marvel movie, a film that I absolutely love from the past, just have a great time and have semi-naughty foods and go to my allotment. Go to my allotment and like doing some digging and like tidying up some borders and things like that. I like, even though I'm 41, I feel like an old man. It's I love it, and it's not about anybody else. It's just me being out in nature, and it's really restful, even though it's active. But it's different to all of this
Mm,
stuff, isn't it?
mm.
And I think that's really, really important. And that's, the next question as we wrap up is about compassion. So the next two parts are for you to do some cool speeches,
Lovely.
some motivational stuff. So do you have any guidance around self-compassion and living authentic truth? What would be kind of like your lovely little speech to anybody listening about, you know, that we deserve to be here, we're worthy people and we're good people and we deserve love? What would be your self-compassionate speech?
That's a good question. I feel that when it comes to self-compassion, you have to own it. You have to say, I'm in this life and I deserve to be here and I deserve, what I want out of this life. And you've just got to trust that you're doing it through the kindness of your heart and also with your values. The first step to building self compassion is understanding what you stand for. Once you know what you stand for, it's so much easier to be guided by life rather than having to that feeling or sense of needing to control life. Having that sense of understanding what your values are is a very, very key part to that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, what matters to us are values. Being a value-led life is a very special one. I think we can all be aware as ND is about justice. I have it. Everybody I know with ND has it. It's like we will not stand for injustice.
Yeah, you know what, justice. That's something that I've had to battle within myself, and sometimes, I've let the sense of justice take the better of me, and so instead of just living my life around justice, I live my life around three things: my mind, my body, and my soul. My mind is I want to keep my mind healthy, happy, and full of wisdom. My body, I want to keep healthy and, you know, resilient for anything that might come. And my soul is I see my soul as helping other people because I see the soul as a way to connect with the world around us in whatever way that we choose to. So the soul is the sense of, how am I contributing to the world around me and what's the most important thing to me? And for me, connection is really, really important. I guess it's because it's something that I felt that I lacked. And the more I've learned and connected with people of all different walking areas of life, you have so much to learn from everybody that we meet. Good, the good, the bad. I've even at the minute started looking into the mindset of prisoners and criminals because I want to understand them. And I think the more that you learn about people and how important we are to helping and contributing to others, the more it's easier to be self-compassionate. There is a thing that I always say, and I saw it somewhere, and I can't sort of say the name of the lady that said it because I can't remember who it was, but it was on a TikTok video, and she said, what you're not changing, you're choosing," and I live by that wholeheartedly because if I'm unhappy with something, why should I remain unhappy in that situation? I have the choice to make that unhappy situation better for myself and for everyone else. So, taking action on what your values are.
I love anybody that has these three things or these five things. I have loads of them
Yeah.
on my on my email drafts. I have all my cool like the five things, and I think it's so useful, especially for my brain. I don't know if it's an ND thing, but I just find it really useful because I can go back and read it and reaffirm with myself. It's not that I've lost it. I'm not living that way, but it's really nice, isn't it, to have that grounding of who you are and what matters to you, which is really, really amazing. This has been amazing. I've loved this so much. I'm looking at the clock and going, I have no idea when we started. I could keep going because we've not even covered anywhere near as much as I could talk to you about. But this last parting message is just for anybody that's listening and you want to say, you got this. Give us your like, NDs are cool and you can achieve whatever you want, things like that. What would be your
Yeah, I
your
mean,
your
my
uh, big
go-to
us up, big up the NDs.
Yeah, I will. I feel like your ADHD brain isn't your enemy, as much as you might think it is. It's actually your secret weapon in disguise. It can be the thing that can really help you thrive as long as you know how to do it. You have to learn how to work with your brain, and you can overcome anything.
I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm trying to think of an analogy here of how to use something. I was like, a drill? If you're not trained how to use a drill, you might put not hang the shelf upright. Anyway, it doesn't work. But you know what I mean, guys? It's like everything about us is a tool that can be used for good and amazingness and used for us to build a life that we really love and care about. And it's just knowing how to use it. And that's where coaches are really useful, guys, whether it's ND or otherwise, or therapists or counselors or whatever it may be. Just do what you got to do. Only obviously if you can afford it, then do it. And if you can't afford it, luckily there is so much content out there. There's so many amazing therapists giving out free tutorials and short courses. So just do your research, find people that you connect with and they like their vibe, and see what you can learn. I think it's so important, and that's what I did as soon as I got diagnosed. Right, who's my ADHD people? What are my favorite podcasts? Who are my favorite YouTubers? Who are my favorite Instagrammers or TikToks? And then just really dive in with an open mind. It's really important, Charlotte, isn't it? It's just to go out there
It
and
is. It's
find
so
your people.
I think as well, you've got to invest in yourself. We spend a lot of money on things. Why shouldn't we invest in ourselves? And when it comes to coaching, I've had a coach, I've had therapy. I would throw my money at it again because it's the only thing that's ever really worked. Because without having someone to help you and guide you, it can be very, very difficult to move forward. You've got to have that support system in place. So it's important to invest in yourself, because investing in yourself means you're going to get a healthy ADHD brain.
True thing. And the three things, seen, held, and heard. I'm doing some show action here. Seen, held, and heard. We need this from a kid onwards. So we need to feel seen by people in a compassionate way. We need to be held in a space. I'm not talking about physical cuddles, but just being held for you to be able to speak and to be listened to, and to be understood more than anything, and just yeah, for people to just give you a chance. I think
Yeah,
all of us just deserve a chance, just
definitely.
to express ourselves. And maybe people, like you said, people want to help. You probably just don't even realize. I just want to thank you for the work you're doing, and that you're so willing to come and share your wisdom on whatever show comes your way. It's great.
It's important. It would be selfish not to share what I've learned.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good message, everybody. Like we said earlier, we've all got something valuable really inside of us to share, which is amazing. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.